The first time that I fired up the game Arc Raiders, I thought I was going to dislike it, hate it even, mainly because I saw that it was centralized around a third-person perspective camera, and I can't stand TPP games, like at all. One of the primary reasons why I never wanted to and barely ever bothered playing the game Fortnite is because of this over-the-shoulder camera action. Couldn't stand it. The only game actually that I recall kind of pseudo-enjoying when using a third-person camera is the game Scum. That survival game, though, had some very unique occlusion mechanics tied to the over-the-shoulder camera that if you couldn't see somebody from a first-person perspective around a corner or some other object, they wouldn't show up unless you stepped out into the open, third-person camera or not. But to my surprise, I found that I was not able to put Arc Raiders down for the entirety of the playtest that happened some 6 months ago. And then unfortunately, I wasn't really able to play during the server slam, aside from a couple of short hours where I was able to play it from TwitchCon at the Arc Raiders booth. That 2 hours, that portion of my gameplay was sponsored, but this video is not. So I want to make sure that I give you guys my unfiltered opinion here in terms of why I believe Arc Raiders actually, from my heart of hearts, could end up being like the next big thing in extraction shooters. And quite honestly, we need one, because aside from Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov, at least in terms of gun games and how they're concerned, there really isn't anything else out there that isn't a clone. And when it comes to a genre like extraction games that feels like it's the new BR style of fad that we saw in the 20-teens, the word oversaturated tends to get thrown around an awful lot. And really, it makes sense. If you look at the BR craze that hit around, 2015 or 2016, we had H1Z1 Battle Royale, but PUBG did it better, and it became dominant. We're talking like 1 million concurrent players. So if it was so dominant, why bother making another BR? Well, Fortnite came out with its building mechanics, and then you add in the ever-changing dynamic environments and what it did from changing from season to season and the in-game events and whatnot, and you had something that was truly special. And then, of course, you have the final of the three, the big three in this case, being Apex Legends, playing off of the Titanfall IP with these hero shooter elements, again, making it unique with its on-use abilities, and that became more than a $1 billion grossing IP over a near decade worth of lifespan. And much like how the extraction genre seems to be now, you have bandwagoners. Call of Duty's Warzone ended up cropping up onto the scene, basically just making it Call of Duty, but a BR. And to be completely honest, there isn't a whole lot of uniquity there. Feels as though it's just Call of Duty, but a BR, where the game had enough fans to just keep the IP alive for a while. Now, I'm not trying to say that the BR is necessarily bad or anything, but in the world of uniquity, it didn't offer a whole lot that was new. It was just a little bit faster paced. Maybe not as fast paced as Apex, but I'm rambling. The extraction genre seems to have, in a lot of aspects, gone the same way. Even some games that seemed as though they had a little bit of uniquity, at least in art design or something along those lines, like Marauders or The Cycle Frontier, tried to offer up something slightly different but fell short of the mark for a myriad of reasons. And that would probably make for a separate video in terms of why they ended up failing the way that they did. Suffice to say, though, that just like how the BR genre had gone and the extraction genre is going right now, it isn't necessarily that it's oversaturated. It's just that no one wants a clone anymore, and they want something that is going to be relatively well thought out. People want uniquity, something thought through, something that looks like it was made with intention. Comparatively speaking, in the extraction genre world, if you will, most games that seem to have been able to withstand the test of time have all relatively been similar to or direct knockoffs in most cases to Tarkov. The big three in this case being Escape from Tarkov, Arena Breakout Infinite, and Delta Force. And no, I haven't forgotten about Hunt Showdown, but in my mind, Hunt Showdown is a bit more objective-based than it is, I guess, mission-based. Now, of course, Delta Force and ABI both have their own unique flavor that they try to spin onto what Tarkov had built. But if you were to compare the three IPs side by side, just environmentally speaking, they kind of the same. Most people in this genre that tend to gravitate toward one IP or another tend to just want to play it for the gunplay and the gun porn. how cool can I make my in-game AR look? Or in the case of being an AK fanboy, how many Zenitco parts can I slap on this 104? But for a wholly new IP to kind of show up on the scene and try to capture some of that extraction genre audience, it has to be something special. As an example of what I mean by this, look at Dark and Darker. Now, granted, for all of its misgivings and all of its failures after lawsuit damaging its gamer sentiment after repeated design mistakes, it still perseveres. It's an extraction game at its core, but it has that uniquity, and even now, several weeks into its new latest and greatest patch cycle where you used to see concurrent player counts in the 3,000 to 5,000 range, today at its low point it was sitting somewhere around 12,000. And for a fledgling IP that is screwed up as bad as that IP has, that's saying something. For all of its misgivings, it's still got some magic. But Arc Raiders is not a Dark and Darker. I think in order for an extraction game to be truly successful, it needs 4 basic things. The first is the struggle bus. The second is what I call tinkering. The third, exploration. Fourth, memes. Games like Escape from Tarkov or Arena Breakout Infinite or Delta Force or Dark and Darker or Hunt Showdown all are centralized around the idea of an economy that is designed around you dying a lot. You are supposed to die often, with a high cost, run it back, and repeat it. And eventually, at some point, you get to where you start living more than 50% of the time, and that helps you amass wealth. But no matter what, no matter how good your gear is, no matter how good your game sense is, inevitably you will come across someone that will end up catching you as the great equalizer and you will lose your stuff. These blindsided and overly frustrating elements of games like this are the thing that people will swear that they hate, but the thing that keeps them coming back for more. If only because they want to be so stubborn as to overcome the animosity that is dying all the time. And Arc Raiders is no stranger to this at all. In fact, with this latest server slam, they ended up ramping up how difficult the Arc drones are and were, and I've got to be honest, they were brutal. The devs have gone so far as to say the focus of this game as a primary core element is the PvE. It's designed around having the PvE in this game be extremely, extremely dangerous. But that's not to say that the PvP is necessarily being ignored, in fact, far from it, but PvE is the cornerstone of this video game. Certain ammunition in certain guns, for instance, like light ammo, has almost no effect on any arc that is larger than, say, your head. All of the medium and large arcs more or less shrug them off with reckless abandon, which leaves you to have to use medium ammo types for the medium-sized arcs and then large ammo for the large-sized arcs. And to add to how the struggle bus carts your ass along, they also used generative AI on all of the arcs and how they behave, more or less having them teach themselves algorithmically how to walk and fly. Tens of, if not 100,000+ times, instances of where this generative AI attempted to make itself learn how to walk, how to fly, and how to interact with the environment around it. So when you take aim with a long gun and end up breaking off one of the props on one of these flying drones and it suddenly starts spinning or spiraling out of control, or the impact of that round actually hitting the fuselage of one of these floating drones and how it suddenly gets jarred away from being able to target you, if only then to struggle to right itself and then try for a different flanking maneuver. All of that has been done via generative AI. And if I may, this is one of the very few instances where we see AI being utilized correctly in video games in a way that creates a game that is not only more immersive, but also more difficult and also more engaging. This, of course, also leads to the fourth point, but we're going to jump ahead and then kind of skip back to the second one, which is memes. And the best, most engaging, most funny meme that I can think of, well, there's probably 2 of them, that centralizes around arc interaction is that you can climb on top of the flying drones and ride them, like this clip here.
I gotta get my stamina back! I'm getting my stamina back! Nice! Yes! 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 Yes, CPU! Go, go, go! Yeah! Let's fucking go! Yes, CPU, don't get off!
And the second is whenever you try to interact with or shoot at the Baron. Because you don't think that it can catch you, but...
Is that you shooting, Abner?
Yeah, I just shot the spider. Yo, is this thing really... Yo!
What just happened?
Yo! What the
What?
fuck?
Is
Dude!
it fucking you up?
Brother! You don't understand!
When I talk about tinkering, what I really mean is theory crafting. The idea that you could look at all of the potentialities on what you could build and through trial and error, develop something that ends up being overall effective. And while Arc Raiders doesn't necessarily have all of the build variations in terms of physical weaponry and attachments that a game like Tarkov does, because let's be honest, there is no other game that has all of the attachments and variable options like what Tarkov does, Arc Raiders offers an extremely deep talent tree system. Forgive me if any of you have already found this, but it's not something that I was able to locate. I'm not sure exactly what the limit for level count is. We're estimating that it might be 50 or it could be 100. But what we do know is that there's an awful lot of talent points that are distributed to the character as they level up each time. For this, there are 3 main talent trees, centralized around conditioning, mobility, and survival. Conditioning focuses on endurance and carry weight, mobility enhances movement, and survival improves survivability and health management with things like health, damage reduction, and other abilities that are designed to help keep you stay alive longer. There are obviously some weapon variations, but while Tarkov has hundreds of different variants, Arc Raiders has 19, at least that we know of. Of course, there could be more that haven't been divulged to us, but we know of 19. For each of these weapon types, there are also weapon rarity tiers that not only determine how much damage output the weapon does, but can also help determine some additional characteristics. For example, in the case of the gun the Rattler, which kind of performs like an AK but has a pinned magazine, as rarity level increases, the magazine size of the rifle also increases. I would say if this game has a weak point, it would probably be in the amount of tinkering that you can do with different builds. You can select things like different sizes of backpacks or how much movement capability you have based on the items that you're carrying or the shield size or the size of the weapons that you are holding. But it is nowhere near as in-depth as how a game like Tarkov is. Few games are. When it comes to exploration, we look at the size of how large a map is, also loot points of interest or boss points of interest. How much traversable terrain is there? How many nooks and crannies can people hide in? How many worthwhile loot points are there on the map that might end up drawing people to them? In the case of Arc Raiders, those maps are large. They take a while to get across, and even the ones that don't seem like they're all that intimidating to get across end up having terrain that makes you work around certain places and ends up significantly adding to your travel time on foot. Now, this stuff can be cut down from instance to instance using things like a grappling hook gun that you can get and kind of stuff into your prison pocket. I would highly recommend doing that. You don't really want to lose that. Or using things like consumable zip lines that you can create on the fly. But in terms of map count, on launch, the game will have 5 large maps, all which will have day and night cycles, and then also weather effects, thunderstorms, which not only affect you, but also affect the arcs. For instance, let's say if one of them were to get hit by lightning and get taken clear out of the sky. And then, of course, for every one of the maps, there are boss arc events, where something like a queen, or maybe even a king, if we end up seeing one, will show up on a map, and there will be an icon on the map denoting that there is a queen or a king on the map when you load in. Also, and not for nothing, this is the first time in the history of pure extraction shooters that I can think of that isn't like DMZ or that atrocity from Battlefield, where we have a game that isn't releasing into early access, but is being released as a fully fledged 1.0 product. So with all of the comparisons of things in there out of the way, whatever, why Arc Raiders? To be completely honest, in my opinion, it's mainly because you can clearly tell through looking at this game and playing it, everything in this game was done with intention. They have gone into thinking through every single painstaking detail of this game so that it is delivered with the true vision or intention of the developers and everything that they really truly wanted us to experience in it. Nothing in this game feels like an afterthought. The aesthetic design decisions, just thematically speaking, are overloaded with retro-futuristic stuff that I remember seeing when I was a kid. From the late 70s into the early 80s of the Star Wars franchise or movies like The Last Starfighter, to the very visibly handcrafted environments. and the overwhelming amount of optimization work that has gone into this. Like, the minimum specs for this game is an Intel Core i5 6600K or Ryzen R5 1600, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and a GTX 1050 or RX 580 or Intel Arc A380. This game is designed to be able to run on a toaster. That is optimization work. But the strongest thing in this game, because I'm me and I'm a huge nerd for this stuff, is the soundscape. A lot of times when you play extraction games like this one, there is an overwhelming amount of noise pollution. You have tons of ambient noise, animal sounds, crickets in the middle of the night, frogs going off, wind sounds, rain, you name it, and it ends up drowning out a lot of what it is that you are attempting to hear. And then if you're actually able to hear them, the majority of the time it ends up so muffled that it may as well not have existed at all. One of the largest complaints that people are making right now for the game Battlefield 6, for instance, which just had its BR game released like yesterday, is that footsteps in the directional sense are not being noticed by other players. The directional audio in that game is relatively atrocious. Compare that to games like R6 Siege or Hunt Showdown, where not only is the audio directionally accurate, but also incredibly immersive. Even going so far, in the case of Hunt Showdown, to simulate what it sounds like to have a rifle fire in the game from separate distances. Are you 10 meters away or are you 800 meters away? Because if you want to know what it sounds like, here you go. And they just serve it to you on a plate. The same can be said for Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders has a soundscape that is made with intention. From the sound of flares popping to flocks of birds that end up taking off, there are audio cues literally everywhere that you can hear what people are doing, where they're doing it, roughly how far away they are. The soundscape of this game is absolutely amazing. When someone ends up triggering the escape hatch somewhere on the map, say 200 meters out, you can hear the alarms going off, the woman over the intercom talking to people saying that's going to be a few moments, that siren forcing the arcs to suddenly flock in that general direction because of all of the excess noise, which you can then hear as the arcs end up honing in on someone. The loud chirping noises as those arcs wind up ready to fire on someone hiding or trying to evade them, and the ensuing flare pops that happen at range. Or, and this is my personal favorite, when the timer runs out and somebody gets nuked. One of the absolute coolest moments in gaming that I think I have ever borne witness to is watching that missile hit, seeing the mushroom cloud, feeling the shockwave as it runs across your character, some 200, 300 meters away. This game is cinema. In the past, whenever somebody has asked me about an extraction shooter, well, since I started making content around Tarkov about 7.5 years ago, the question has always come up as to whether or not I believed that a certain game was going to end up usurping Tarkov and become the Tarkov killer. Arc Raiders is not going to be a Tarkov killer. But it's not going to be a Tarkov killer for a completely different reason, aside from games like Arena Breakout Infinite or Delta Force. Because Arc Raiders isn't trying to, Embark is not trying to make a better, more palatable, more interesting Tarkov. They're not trying to make a game like Tarkov that's going to appeal to a wider audience. They are trying to make an extraction shooter that other people also want to play. It's not a choice between whether or not someone wants to play Arc Raiders or Tarkov. It will be a choice as to whether or not someone wants to play Arc Raiders or literally anything else. And for a while, at the very least, I can tell you that Arc Raiders has its hooks firmly placed on me, which I say with a grain of salt, because Nexon owns this studio. And while I am assured by the game director himself, as a matter of fact, as I walked next to him at TwitchCon asking him questions about the game one-to-one, Nexon does not have any publishing rights or directorial control over how the game gets monetized, which I find to be a very important distinction. And while I'm not happy that Nexon themselves will monetarily benefit from Arc Raiders, and I believe that it will monetarily benefit from Arc Raiders in a way that Nexon is not used to, I believe that their monetary benefit will come as a result of no actual effort of their own. I believe that the monetary benefit for Nexon in this case will come as a result of fantastic dev work, something that is well thought out in a genre that truly needs something new, fresh, and unique to propel it forward. And I genuinely believe that Arc Raiders is that IP. Now, of course, like anything else, I could be wrong. But hey, starting tomorrow at 5:30 a.m. Eastern, we're all going to find out together. While you're waiting for that, maybe check out this video that the algorithm is recommending you right here in the corner. Something tells me you might like it.